You're running a successful consulting business, but something's not right. You're working more hours, but not seeing the proportional growth. Every decision still comes through you. Every proposal needs your touch. You know there's a better way. You're not just sure what it is. You're listening to the Paul Higgins podcast. I'm Paul, and I help consultants build businesses that don't require them to be at the center of everything. I spent 18 years at Coca-Cola, then built and sold my own consulting business. Along the way, I learned that working harder isn't the answer. Building better systems is. Each week, I sit down with consultants who's cracked the code on scalable growth and experts who support them. Real conversations and how they broke through the bottleneck and built businesses that work without them. Let's dive in. You're stuck in the daily grind of your consulting business. Every client wants your personal attention. Every project needs your oversight. You're the bottleneck, and it's killing your growth potential and any hope of a potential future exit. Most consultants think the solution is hiring more people or working harder. Wrong. The real answer is systematically removing yourself from the operations while building leadership layers that can run the business without you. In today's episode, you'll discover 3 critical insights. First, how to transition operational responsibility without losing client relationships. Rachel, our guest, walks us through the 9-month journey from project manager to COO at radianHub. Second, the financial levers that matter when you're running the business, not just delivering projects. We'll dive into the P&L responsibility and how understanding the numbers changes the strategic mindset. Third, how to scale your team and delegate effectively while ensuring seamless client transitions. Rachel shares the real challenges and systems needed to make it work. Today's guest is Rachel Plowman, COO of radianHub. Rachel has spent her career in information technology with 5 Salesforce certifications, specializing in business analysis and software consulting within the Salesforce ecosystem. Rachel recently completed a strategic transition, as I've mentioned, from project manager to COO at radianHub, a Salesforce consulting firm focused on non-profit implementations. The transition was part of founder Russell's preparation for sale, removing founder dependency and building scalable leadership systems. Over 9 months, she gradually took on P&L responsibility, project profit analysis, and operational oversight while maintaining client relationships and team performance. She's living proof that you can systematically remove founder bottlenecks without sacrificing results. This episode is the perfect bookend to episode 531, where I interviewed Russell about preparing for sale. Today, you'll see how to actually execute the transition that de-risks founder dependency. I'll now hand you over to Rachel Plowman. Fantastic to have you here, Rachel.
Thanks for having me. I'm happy to be here.
Yeah, well, it's all about you today, but it is a bit of a bookend because I did have Russell on episode 531. And when I had him on the podcast, it was really talking about how do you gear up for sale? You know, what are the things you're going to do? And I suppose the bookend today is the fact that, you know, you've helped him de-risk being, founder, not founder-led, but founder-reliant, I suppose is a better word. Which we'll talk in more detail, but just remind us with radianHub who's your ideal client and what problems you love to solve for them.
Absolutely. We move in the vertical of nonprofit heavy and ISV heavy. So we lean more into, on my side of the house, nonprofit, and we love to solve the problems of streamlining their businesses and tracking for grants. There is a ton of requirements on the reporting end, so we love solving that for them, to give them the data output that they are required and beholden to, and streamline and make their day easy.
Great. And we're recording this in, it's going to come out in September of 2025. Has the sector been impacted a lot by a lot of the changes that's happening in the US at the moment with Doge and other knock-on effects?
That's a great question. Out of the gate, there was a couple of knee-jerk reactions from our clients, and they paused the engagement until all of that played out and, administration rolled out more information, because a lot of those nonprofit clients are funded by grants to do these implementations. So I think at first we had a few that we were actively engaged in, and they paused us for a few weeks until they could internally align on making sure the funds were still coming through to be able to get to the finish line with these implementations. And now that initial fear is over and there's some real data and they can find answers about all those initial questions they had, we aren't seeing it as impactful in terms of our sales cycle as we initially thought we were going to have to prepare for.
That's good news in a lot of, unfortunately, not good news situations at the moment. And yeah, I regularly listen to Bloomberg, but there's never any real follow through at the other end. So let's hope that continues in some, particularly in this sector, which means so much, the people that really need it. When I spoke to Russell back, can't remember the timing, but it's a while ago. This is episode 634, so it's nearly 100 to the spot. He did mention you, and he mentioned the fact that you're a key team member, but he was looking to give you greater responsibility. So sort of take us through those conversations and how it was first approached, or how the topic was approached with you, and then take us through the journey of what sort of transpired since.
Absolutely. So when the conversation was brought up in terms of the strategic roadmap relative to the end goal of the sale of radianHub, there was an understanding and an explanation of really pulling out from a co-founder, hands to keyboard, in the weeds, and really having that middle layer of leadership to rely on, and really take that onus off the co-founders so they can be more appropriated across the business, preparing for that acquisition and really focusing on those key elements to get there. When Russ had approached me, he had brought it to me as what in this role would be interesting or what would be lacking that I'm currently doing. And I found the piece of really just understanding the operational efficiencies, the P&L is really interesting to me, and that organically aligned with where he wanted the conversation to go, with taking over more of that operational role and understanding more of the P&L on a day-to-day basis to inform my decisions. We just started the conversation, and the more I dove into it, and it was much more organic than I'm making it sound, but he would just say, "Hey, I need help solving this problem," and give me insight into what the logistics behind that or the numbers behind that, which really snowballed into me finding it fulfilling. As that kind of naturally went, the conversation really took a turn to what would my appetite be to walk into that COO role, so it really elevate them out of that as founder-led organization and change my way of thinking in my day-to-day, but still having a real hand in what's happening and behind the curtain. And we just started that conversation. There was no timelines involved, and there was no checklist to go through. It was just really getting hands to keyboard, real life, real data, real numbers, real experience in real time with the organization I was already working for, with the people that I've already managed. So it was just the perfect storm for me to understand what that even looked like from a day-to-day perspective, and B, understand what would change with my current role and how much, given little bits at a time of the responsibility shift that would happen.
If you look back now, how long was that transition? If you look from you officially taking on the CEO role to Russell first mentioning it, how long was that time period?
I would say it was about 9 months.
Right. And for the things that, if we go back to that P&L for a moment, in the 9 months that it took, plus the time you've been in the CEO role, what are sort of the key levers that you now know to pull to improve the profitability of a Salesforce partner business versus the ones that you didn't know prior?
Yeah, that was really interesting because it gave me that insight to really understand that operating expense, right? So where we might have went after a smaller client in the moment, really looking at that and really seeing how we can scale quicker with longer engagements and forecasting out more based on understanding what our expenses are that month, looking at the total pipeline, and really having an idea of the runway of the pipeline, the operating expenses, and the forecast with the projects in flight and the projects on deck.
Yes.
So it was really interesting to kind of see behind the curtain in the P&L to really give foresight to mathematically what made sense or mathematically the best decision, but also keeping in mind that you want to do the right thing for the right client. So just giving you both of that level of understanding really helped drive a different thought track that I had initially looked at. Oh, we got a project, let's do it. It changes your mindset a little bit to more strategic and just gives you that a little bit more information to really think about it very differently.
And are you getting down to project profitability? Do you?
Yes, absolutely. Like, and that is kind of where I find the most interest in role within the COO is really understanding from the day we start a project to the day we end and all the resources that will take to get us from inception to deployment and completion and quantifying that in terms of cost benefit, where we can move the kind of the chess pieces with resource planning and timelines is just a really interesting way to think about the P&L as a whole, but also the delivery quality and timeline and the best resources to fit that for the best outcome for the client.
Yeah, and the one that it always brought up around this conversation is, time tracking.
Oh,
How much detail do you guys go into actual tracking time?
that is, I think if you ask any developer, they would say it's the worst part of their job. I am fortunate, and the employees of radianHub are fortunate because we've built out a homegrown application that has a start stop timer on the actual work that they're doing. So it can be as granular as to the minute, which from a reporting perspective, when it rolls up to a project manager, it is wildly accurate. And then you can roll that up to a less granular view when you're reporting to an executive. So just having that level of visibility and depending on your audience, how granular you would like it to be is huge. But that all started with equipping our team members who are doing the hands to keyboard configurable work to make it as easy as possible to track their time so that can really snowball upstream to the people that really have to make those decisions.
Great. And as you made this transition, obviously you've stepped up. What's happened below you? Like, what did you get someone to replace your previous role? Just tell us a little bit about how, you filled the gap from you taking on more responsibility to what you used to do.
Yeah, that was still a little bit in transition. We have definitely scaled up our resources and giving them a few more elevated roles and responsibilities. I am of the mind that I'm still in an active transition where I still like to walk alongside. So part of my individual goals is to ensure that while delegating, making sure that those resources in those leadership roles have kind of that mentor peer mentorship as they move through their newly acquired role as I'm moving through mine. So while I'm delegating, I still want to be walking alongside them. So it's really interesting to see people really step up and take that opportunity to learn and grow and really be reliable. It's really great to see because it's almost like we're transitioning into these new roles together, although very separate, really helping each other understand what the necessary is to get to the end goal, which is everyone delivering great products and ensuring that our clients are happy.
Yeah, great. And what's with the transition? When I was back in corporate, we used to talk about, 70/20/10 rule, which was, 70% job training, like skill development, etc. So let's say you're going from a project manager to a COO, you need different skills. There's different ways to acquire them. In corporate, we used to talk about on job as 70%, 20% was with internal. So you might spend time with Russell, for example, or the other co-founder, etc. Or the other one was external. What external resource or support you could get. You could get a mentor, a coach. You could, go on a program, etc. Just with your transition, what sort of mix of that 70/20/10 is sort of happened in your situation?
Yeah, I would say definitely really been given the autonomy to dive into those more hands to keyboard type behind the curtain job roles. And then as far as everybody have a mentorship. So I have mentees, I have an assigned mentor, definitely have the ability to take classes. There's always some external resources in terms of online classes, certifications, things like that. So it's always very encouraged. We again are I've reached out to some of my clients that are in leadership just to kind of talk through, really just building that relationship from being in the project management, but then reaching out more of a peer to peer. So that's been really interesting and really insightful. And they've actually been wildly helpful with real life scenarios and every day, and having that rapport again based on the previous role really helped me feel comfortable reaching out and got some really full insight there. So as of now, the flavor is ever changing, but I do feel like the landscape here at radianHub has made it wildly accessible to be able to do that and feel empowered to do that. And then personally, I like to obviously listen to podcasts, and then there's a lot of psychology that I think is really important in my previous role with as a PM. So I've really started to dive into that because behind the world of tech are people as well. So really understanding what drives people and digging into psychology. So I've found that to be wildly helpful, and reading and researching and podcast sociology and psychology of the people that we work with every day.
Yeah, great. And as far as, if someone said, what's your leadership style, right? And given everything that we've just talked about, all the learnings that you've acquired, how do you best describe your leadership style?
I would say ever evolving, because I feel like they're walking into the COO role. My mindset was what will be my style, what will be expected of me. But I've quickly learned that that will never be a canned answer, because I think there's always room to shift and grow, especially when we have different generations of resources and different generations of clients. And I think being able to match and meet people where they are and have the ability to pivot your style to the need of first your employees, right? But secondary to clients, because that is, I think, where people see value is being able to feel like they're met where they are. So I'm hoping that I'm ever forever learning so I can have the wherewithal to adapt to the employees and the clients and the other leaders in the room.
Great. Well, we'll sum that up as adaptive. I think that is a good way to summarize that. And as far as some of your clients, were there clients that were used to being able to pick up the phone, email you, have constant contact with you, that they still had that expectation, but you no longer had the time? And if that was the case, how did you sort of work through that?
I'm still working through that a bit. There's a part of me that knows I have to tactically let that go. It's just not sustainable. But there's another part of me that wants to make sure that the transition to another resource here is smooth. There has been time for that proper KT. So I feel like of the total relationship, as we move through those relationships, that I've taken the time to knowledge transfer that to that person taking over that relationship. Still happening. It's a little bit slower than I anticipated, but I think constantly bringing that new relationship face into those conversations and on those calls and copying them in emails and giving them an opportunity to respond or speak first, even though I'm still there, is a slow approach, but I think it's the best for the couple of clients I have that still reach out directly.
Great. And, we can't have a podcast these days without talking about AI. And so how is AI, because you've had this change and then the world of AI has basically exploded. So how are you using AI in your role, but also how are your team using AI, and what has been some of the benefits today?
Yeah, it's been a very quick adoption across all verticals. I feel our team is using it across the board: documentation, presentation, code reviewing. There's all flavors in all AI platforms that are being used. But relative to our client space, Salesforce agent
Yes.
is being highly recommended. And we've baited it with a couple of clients and really starting to see how we can take those really mundane, monotonous tasks and eliminate those. And especially when you talk about sales, the value is huge. It's just really, really stacking hands on the front to make sure that the what goes in, understanding the legwork ahead of it really producing that success that is always the shiny new thing that's being sold on the back end. So it's been a wild ride, but I do see the time, the place, the situation, and the client. And it just seems to be molding and evolving to have a little bit of flavor for each of those situations and produce really great things if used in the right way at the right time with the right client.
Yeah, and have you, is there a set aside time to share learnings of AI? Like what's the way that ensuring that everyone is getting the benefits of individuals using AI and sort of getting that collective knowledge together? How are you doing that in Radiant Hub?
That's a great question. We have multiple different channels within Slack, just like sharing channels, but we've also have our developers have taken it to a different level and they have a roundtable and it's really specific about sharing AI, sharing experiences. And as that grows and evolves and we have more and more clients, we are reaching out to them for like case studies. So really trying to understand like the initial what brought them into thinking about AI, what was their end goal, and then how they got there and their experience with it. So really having that real client case studies as we continue to onboard AI within those implementations, I think will be huge for our clients as well as internally just learning from other projects that you might not have been on.
We sort of talked about P&L responsibility. We talked about time tracking. With AI, have you seen an improvement in margin because of use of AI? Like, are you effectively either, taking less time, I suppose, to deliver the work that you once did? And if you are, how material has that been so far?
Yeah, I think there has definitely been a shift within the margins for the documentation and the weekly reports and things like that. And I think as we continue to kind of templatize those things within the
Yes.
context of AI, we'll really start to see what that dollar over dollar savings looks like. I don't think we have that yet, but we're really thinking through how we can templatize things, onboard our own teams to adopt them in a way that makes the most sense, and then really start to look at velocity, month over month. But no, we have not got there yet, but it's definitely on the roadmap because I think out of the gate that would be a really easy thing to do. Like I said, the initial work going into building out those templates is where we are at this moment.
Great.
But it will
And
be exciting.
yeah, yeah, it is. It's incredible. I just, my family is just sick of me, coming down the stairs at night just talking about AI. It's like, Dad, you've got a, new love affair. I thought it was golf, but now it's AI. But
It's AI.
it is quite incredible. A quick example, I've set up, I've got a mentor and I work in a mentoring session, which I do for my clients, but I've also created my own. And it's an AI mentor that's basically I've set it up in Claude, and it's brilliant for accountability. You're running in a business, but a lot of us got smaller teams, and it really is something that can be hugely powerful. And what I love is that it's not just a mentor, but it can also produce outcomes. So it can produce a marketing funnel, etc. It's quite amazing. But that's a whole different podcast, which we won't go down that rabbit hole. But the last question I want to ask is, what have you seen from your perspective? What have you seen the change in Russell? So what's Russell been able to do that he wasn't doing previously now that you've taken some of those key responsibilities from him?
Yeah, I would hope that his answer would be really focusing on sales and re-engaging those relationships that him and Doug worked so hard for at the inception of Radiant Hub. And I think fostering those older relationships and being able to cultivate new relationships. And he's been really involved in building out those case studies based on, historical clients and the outcomes from those implementations. And I would hope that that would be a result of him having a little time freed up.
Yes.
And so, yeah, I think that has definitely been something I've seen. And a lot of clients have been very excited to be asked to be part of those case studies that he is cultivating now.
Yeah, brilliant. All right, great. Well, what we're going to do now is just pause for a moment. We'll thank our sponsors and then we'll come back for the rapid fire. Brilliant execution, terrible strategy. You can solve any client problem, but you're stuck in the same revenue patterns, same deal sizes, same time for money trap. I'm Paul and I built and sold a 7-figure consulting business, but here's what I've learned mentoring other consultants. The real breakthroughs happen when you combine my experience with live problem solving of people going through exactly what you're facing now. In my group program, Steve works through his VA delegation challenge with Jed. Jed shares what's actually working. Andrew tests his pricing strategy with Casey, and Casey demonstrates his client onboarding system. Everyone's figuring it out together with my guidance based on what I learned the hard way. It's not theory, it's real-time strategic thinking with consultants in the trenches plus someone who's already made the journey. Stop grinding alone. Start thinking strategically. Go to paulhigginsmentoring.com/WWM. That's paulhigginsmentoring.com/WWM. So, Rachel, ready for the rapid fire?
Let's do it.
All right. So the first question is, we've talked about AI in this, but what's one AI, either tool or application, that's really blown your mind at the moment that you're using?
I have a very, very short love affair with right-click prompt. Just found it out a couple months ago, and I am obsessed.
Brilliant. I haven't heard of that one, so I'll add it to my list. The next one is, what's the go-to-market strategy for radianHub that's most surprised you? What's working the best?
I have been most surprised by organic client referrals to other organizations.
Brilliant. And the next one is, we sort of touched on it. You said podcast, etc. But is there anything else that you go to help develop your role that we haven't covered?
Yes, I like talking to leaders that are not in the tech space.
Brilliant. And the last one is, what do you wish you had have known earlier that you know now transitioning into this COO role?
I think transitioning into the COO role, I would have loved to document everything and anything, but I think that also is a little bit driven by the AI and the templates and having to think back and try to remember that specific thing that worked well or didn't work well, because you always remember the catastrophic failures or huge successes. So just documenting everything so you could use that to learn and grow.
Awesome. Well, it's been great doing that bookend. Unfortunately, I couldn't line them completely up, but go and listen to Russell for the first chapter, which is episode 531. And then obviously, Rachel, thanks for rounding it out, episode 634. But brilliant having you on, and well done for this transition and the growth that you've gone on and sharing it with us today.
Thank you so much for having me.
What a great interview with Rachel. And Rachel story proves you don't need to stay trapped at the center of your consulting business, but it requires intentional systems and leadership development, and not just hoping someone will step up. Rachel and Russell executing what most consultants only dream about, systematically removing founder dependency while maintaining quality and growth. This isn't about hiring more people. It's about building leadership layers that scale without you. If you're the bottleneck in your business, start documenting processes, identify potential leaders. So if you're the bottleneck in the business, start documenting processes, identify potential leaders, and begin the transition today. Hope without action is wishful thinking. Want to learn how to build these systems? Watch my free training at paulhigginsmentoring.com/training, where I break down the exact 3 systems for creating this transition. Stop being the bottleneck and start building the business that works for you. See you next time on the Paul Higgins podcast. What stood out to you from today's conversations? Look, building a consulting practice that doesn't resolve around you isn't easy, but it's possible. The consultants and the experts I interview have proven that. Every week I share insights from those conversations, practical strategies from people who've actually done it or help others do it. If you want to learn more from this experience, get my newsletter at paulhigginsmentoring.com/newsletter. Just practical stuff from consultants who's figured it all out. And if this was helpful, share it with another consultant. We're all trying to crack the same code. Thanks for listening.